take a second to stop and smell the flowers with America's most isolated podcast, The Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Oh, I'm Ben Sheets, and the mind is the anus of the eyelid.
Incredible. Wow, I never thought about it like that.
That's gonna make no sense to anyone listening.
Nope.
That's
And we're going to sound like idiots trying to explain it, but whatever.
It's cool. We love an inside joke. All right. Hey, who's at the door? Rock, rock, open up the door. It's real. It's the rock, rock, rockin' of rocks. You feel? It's me, Cleveland Motion. How y'all doing tonight?
I'm vibing.
Yeah.
We just watched a Vibes movie.
We did.
A movie that I'm gonna struggle to talk about.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was
hoping
like,
at least one of y'all.
I'm hoping you guys have a lot to say. Cause...
This might have been a good one to watch like a few days before instead of right before recording.
We're gonna muddle our way through it. We finally saw Enys Men. Enys Men.
As I'll be calling it for the rest of the podcast.
We finally saw Enys Men. A film that came out several months ago now, but
very
limited release. Usually even limited release stuff we can get around here. Like we did get to see Skinamarink in theaters when that came out, but not this one.
You had to go to a small island and stare at a rock to see this movie.
Basically.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We finally saw it. This is a film that is written and directed by a gentleman named Mark Jenkin. I was just scrolling through his filmography before this. It's mostly shorts and music videos. I saw he's got at least one other feature called Bait that came out in 2019, but it's a relatively new director. And
this movie was Bait. It was art house bait.
It is, yeah. It is art house bait.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was certainly the trailer did not quite convey the actual tempo of this film.
I disagree. I watched this trailer, and y'all remember I was like, I think this movie's gonna be pretentious, and I think it was. I think.
Yeah, it was.
A little bit.
I'm gonna sit back and let one of you explain to me the story of Enys Men.
Okay, I got this.
After you.
I got this. Please. This is easy because there's not much of a story.
It's a lot of unreliable narrator too.
This film's about just over 90 minutes, and it is about a unnamed woman alone on an island off the Cornish coast. She is there to study some flowers, and it's basically...
And grieve?
Yeah, maybe. Unclear. It's basically your classic isolation causes insanity film with maybe something supernatural going on.
With all the tropes.
But just, the most vague, nebulous version of that you can imagine. This is one, like, we just watched it. This is a movie that, like you said earlier, Cleve, I kind of wish we had a few days to simmer on before talking about, because I don't know, maybe I'm too dumb for this movie.
No, this movie made me feel very dumb.
No, guys. Okay, look.
I feel like there is something that this... Obviously, I think Mark Jenkin is trying to say something with this film. I don't know what, and I'm undetermined whether that's my problem or the film's problem. I haven't figured that out yet.
Here's the thing. Whenever we do focus testing for QA in games, and a player is, like, hits a puzzle or a challenge or something, and they say, damn, I feel like I'm really stupid right now. We all have to stop and say, no, the puzzle's stupid, we need to fix it. Right? Like, just from, like, a development... And I get it, you don't want to dumb down your shit so hard, and, like...
I also think that's...
You want to maintain, like, something academic...
That's not... I don't think that's a one... I don't think that's a one-to-one correlation.
I do think it's an interesting comparison, because I think this movie, to me, while watching it, I felt like, oh, this would have probably worked better as a video game. Having agency of, a character and seeing some of the spooky, weird stuff going on would have worked a lot better than a movie where you're just passively observing something without agency.
Honestly, what I was thinking the whole time is I was like, this would make a great Bell Witch music video.
Yes. Yo, I agree to that. So
this would make it's about the right length.
Before I get like too harsh on the things I don't like about this movie, I want to leave with some positives.
Sure.
Right? The visuals. Pretty great. I liked a lot of the shots in this film. First off, authentic grain, really nice, really pretty. Already better than Skinamarink.
Shot on 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
At least
Wonderful.
mostly.
Yeah.
I'm there are a few shots that I wouldn't be surprised if they went back and did some pickup shots digitally.
Sure.
But yes, mostly. The film is set in 1973, and I did have to consciously remind myself a number of times through the film that it was not made in 1973.
Yeah. No, it's a good job of appearing as if it's of the era.
Yeah, it's very authentic feeling,
which is an impressive feat. I think.
will say it also kind of is very vibrant in terms of usage of color. Bright reds, bright yellows throughout the film.
Well, splashes of color against a kind of characteristically muted sort of English backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, you know what this movie reminded me of? You've seen it, Tease, is Don't Look Now. Nicholas Rogue's
Yeah, I can see that. That's a movie that I'm not super... I haven't seen it since, freshman year of college, and I was not super hot on Don't Look Now.
I'm not a big fan
I
of
feel
Nicholas
like I need
Rogue
to...
in general. I know a lot of people adore his movies, but I just find them boring.
Yeah.
And vibes can only take you so far, in my opinion.
But the vibes, generally,
Depends.
I liked. And the score as well. I really liked the ambient.
It's like a weird minimal synth.
Yeah, weird synthy stuff and and pretty haunting, earnestly haunting. And I love a weird minimal haunting.
Feels time period appropriate as well until the credits music, which where you get the remix.
Yeah.
I just saw that
trip hop remix.
I did see in the credits that Mark Jenkins did the score for this as well.
Yeah, which in this case good. I don't see that as an ego thing. That was nice.
This is an interesting movie because I don't feel like I super connected with it, but in terms of concrete gripes, I don't have many. I certainly didn't have a bad time with the movie. I think I overall enjoyed it, but it's easy to compare to another very minimalist experimental feature film of this year, Skinamarink, which I feel like I connected with much more than this. Very different films, very different goals, very different aesthetics.
I think that's a very valid comparison. You know what I was thinking of throughout the film is the movie Inside with Willem Dafoe that we watched.
I was gonna say, there's so many movies called Inside.
No, Inside with Willem Dafoe, where he gets stuck in the apartment.
Man,
we saw it in the theater.
I already forgot we saw that movie.
That's the interesting discussion question that I wanted to bring to the table here is, minimalistic movies are a very challenging feat because you have to, do so much with so little. You have to engage your audience without really kind of playing your cards. Mm-hmm. And I think we all agree that Inside wasn't super effective at that.
No.
And originally I was going to ask this assuming you guys liked this movie a bit more than I think you do now that we've talked about it.
I like this movie. Movie.
What do you think makes minimalist stuff like this in this movie work, where it doesn't work necessarily in something like Inside? Because I think they're very similarly minimalistic.
Yeah, I I feel like intention does kind of matter in this case, because like I feel like Inside, which is not a comparison that I would have made, but it's an interesting one, and a film that I have already forgotten about, that we saw not that long ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't help. We full disclosure, we saw it in a double feature with Creed 3, which is like one of the most maximalist movies.
Yeah.
And to go from that to like a super minimalist movie
Sure, it's pretty exhausting.
just made the contrast all the more glaring.
But to answer your question, I do think that it's in the case of those two films compared, that it is a matter of intent, because Inside presents itself kind of as like a heist film / like escape film. You know, it's Willem Dafoe locked in this
There's
like
a literal plot.
Yeah, locked in this like super high-tech apartment building. He's an art thief. He gets trapped. He's trying to get out. You know, it's something that should be exciting, but it isn't. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the big problem with Inside, is that like, yeah, it's about him sort of losing his mind in isolation, but really I want to I'm invested in his attempt to escape. Right? So I feel like there should be some kind of excitement for that. And something like this is very obviously meant to be slow, hypnotic, dreamy. It's about like the sort of blending of reality with dream and hallucination caused by, you know, prolonged period of isolation.
Sure.
So I think that like this movie sort of immediately lays its cards on the table. It's like, I feel like I knew what this movie was going to be pretty quickly once we started it.
Yeah, even from the trailer. Like,
and Inside, I think the trailer's more, you know, the trailer shows literally everything remotely exciting that happens in this film. So I do think it's kind of like
it's a misleading trailer.
It's a misleading trailer. It does lead you to believe that more is happening in this film than it is.
Yeah, well, it
but
sets itself up to be like a Wicker Man.
Right, but then once you're
get...
actually watching the movie, when you're like 10 or 15 minutes in, it's like, okay, I understand the cadence of this film. I know what I'm in for basically the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think that's
and you
a
can
really
accept
good point.
that. But with Inside, it's like, I'm waiting. It's like, is this going to be when something actually happens?
Yeah, and that's a really good point that I hadn't completely considered, is like every film succeeds or fails on its own terms.
Totally.
Right? Like, and Inside kind of fails because it sets itself up to be sort of a heist escape movie, and it really doesn't do much with that. Where this movie sets itself up to be a minimalist piece on isolation and
it's a dreamy film.
Because of that, it succeeds. I don't know if I can say it succeeds. Because...
My problem is
I think this film does succeed in its goals. Does it connect with me personally? Kind of.
I found a lot of the mechanics to be tropey. I think that some of them are pretty well executed, but man, there's so much, you know, tea kettle, you know, whining shit that this movie does. It's like every fucking horror movie does the whining tea kettle.
Yeah, and I've seen like the journal entry where everything is the same and suddenly something changes.
Exactly. There's so many tropes in this movie.
Yeah. You know?
And like for a minimal film to also be tropey, you're left kind of wondering like, okay, what's left? I've been waiting to bring it up, but it's time. Our favorite film to call on, Hagazusa.
Hagazusa.
Look, I think that Hagazusa is a way better movie. Like,
I disagree.
I think personally, I like the environment more in Hagazusa. I like what I'm looking at, but also when it comes to subject matter, I think that there are more original and kind of unique things happening. And here, it's like it's well enough executed. Again, like the score is great and the cinematography is interesting, but the cinematography is very direct. You know, things are always very perfectly framed in center, you know, or in the third, and the camera always just slowly tracks, and we always watch the character walk all the way through a shot. It's very, like, young Herzog-esque to me. You know, like, I remember in Nosferatu, you know, you always get, like, the wagon going all the way across the bridge. We see the whole journey. And here it's much the same. You know, like, we get our whole journey going down from the flowers back up to the house several times. Always from different angles, very pretty, with unique music. And it's nice. But then whenever that's interrupted, it's often, again, interrupted by tropes. And, you know, she looks up and she sees her dead lover's face, but then, oh no, it's just the side of the building. You know, it's things I've seen a million times. And, you know, there's a big monument on the island, a big rock, that's supposed to be representative of grief. So, okay, cool. The movie's about grief.
Is that what it's supposed to be representative of?
That's what the radio says, yeah. There's a piece on the radio that comes on. I know it was almost indistinguishable British, but, like, one of the first ones that came on was talking about how, like, it's a place where all these miners, like, the island, like, the Enys Isles or whatever, it's a place where all these miners died, and people also come to the island for, like, some sort of, like, grief ritual, or for I don't think it was a ritual, but it was, like, for, like,
well, there's
to experience grief in front of the stone, and the stone is, like, a monument to grief. Which is why it's, like, knocking at the door, and, like, we keep seeing all these people she lost around herself, and all these other dead bodies.
Rock, who's there?
So if you guys were looking for, like, an explanation to the movie, that's it. It's about grief.
So it's every horror movie ever made.
Exactly, tropes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I guess you're right. Like,
it's carrying itself. It carries itself like an academic film. Like it looks beautiful. It's shot to me. It looked just like it's from the 70s, and it's weird kind of synths, and it's all very art housey. But at the end of the day, it's just another horror movie about grief using the same tropes of grief, and I find that to be pretentious. Like, and
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry though. Hagazusa is just as tropey and is a student film about mental illness.
Yes, no, it's not
so
that.
I'm gonna push back a little bit there.
No, you are right on that point. They're both vibes movies. I just think that Hagazusa is more unique.
Here,
like the vibes of Hagazusa
come through
better,
with the bold take.
Okay,
they both suck.
Fair. You can not like both of them. I honestly though, here's the thing.
I think they're both okay, somewhat undeveloped.
Like here's the thing. I think I like the subject matter of Hagazusa a lot more. Witches are fucking cool. I'd rather watch something with that subject matter. Sure, bias, whatever. But like with Enys Men, I found it to be I found the tropes to just be like it's not just the subject matter, it's also the execution. I don't know. I think it was just a lot. It was more.
I don't know.
I
actually feel like
But I didn't hate it that much.
I feel like I appreciate the execution of what's in this film a lot. I think that more of my problems just come from I feel like I wish there was a little bit more happening. It feels wrong to say that of something like of a film like this because it's not really what it's about. But I just like, you know, Skinamarink, which is a similarly like very slow like vibes based film. Like it does have a number of like good payoffs.
Yes.
And I don't think that this film ever has anything amounting to a payoff. And I think it's okay, but it does leave me a little bit hollow at the end of it. Like I was wanting some sort of climax.
I'll give you that. I'll give you this. Like a little beer, little dribble.
Spill my beer.
But no, I'll give you this. Skinamarink has a way better plot. Like, and the beats are better in Skinamarink too. I like to look at this movie more, and I like that I could see what was happening in this movie, and that's cool. Unlike Skinamarink. But like with
we know that your types of vibes movies are ones that you can see.
Yes, exactly, and I can see this movie. So in that, I'm gonna give it some points. Like it was nice to look at. The grain was nice and swimmy and pretty, and it really I really like how there's a lot of cool shots where like the moss and the rocks and the algae from the rocks and like the really swimmy patterns of the water all like kind of diffuse into the grain, and you get these wonderful kind of like soft, really soft browns, greens, and purples.
Yeah, it's a really nice looking film.
Pool into each other, and it looks great. And I wish it had anything to do with grief, but like, or something that it tied into the story more, other than it just being like pretty shots on the island, because it looked great, but it didn't mean anything. It was like when you go to like a fine dining restaurant and they give you like this giant plate, and in the center of it is like a tiny like
Cleve
thing
with the food
stacked.
metaphors.
I love a food metaphor. I do.
We know. I don't think you go a single episode without doing a food metaphor.
Good callback. So like, and it's like it's like a big plate, and it's got like a little like crust of something over the top of it. It looks really pretty, and maybe they do something with the sauce where it's kind of splattered. It's fine dining bullshit, and it's like, it's tasty, but there's no sustenance there. Like, there's nothing to fucking eat.
Yeah, I almost feel like this movie would have gotten a lot of more mileage out of being direct a little bit more.
Yes.
I feel that so much is implied and metaphor about grief and kind of in her mind that, like, it leaves you kind of flat because of it. Because there's no, like, through line to keep the audience engaged beyond, oh, this is a metaphor for grief.
There's no real anchor. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. I mean, okay, maybe I will push back against that a little bit. I think it's thin, but I think the anchor of the film and what contributes to some of the things I like about it too, the anchor is the routine, is the ritual.
Sure.
Of how she goes throughout her day. Goes out, she checks this little patch of flowers, takes the temperature of the soil, walks back, drops a rock down the mine shaft, goes back to the house, makes tea, listening to the radio, sits down, has dinner, makes her notes in the notebook, the date, the temperature of the soil, observation, always no change. And then she goes to bed reading her book. What is it? A Blueprint for Survival?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's every single day, beat for beat for beat. And then gradually things start to interrupt and disrupt that.
Brief.
And again, it's thin. It's thin. I do think that there is something there, and
conceptually, but in practice, I just don't feel like it's engaging enough to,
I agree.
claim that it's interesting. I think a great example of, it just not working super well is there's a shot where it's a close up of her staring, right? And then it cuts to a dude staring back at her, and then it cuts back to her face close up, and then it's just a brick wall close up. There is implication in how you edit your film, right? The shot order really matters in what you're trying to imply. It's the
Kuleshov effect, yeah.
And like with that sequence, what are they trying to say?
Well, it's what I said earlier. She zoned out and thought about her lover for a second.
Yeah,
like that's it's grief is like working its way into.
It's the intrusion. It's the haunting. Of these. These old ghosts of her memories and the ghosts of the island. Yeah, all the miners and stuff, and there's the little placard at the dock about the boat,
the lifeboat
that everybody died when it went to help some ship, and when the boatman comes later, I don't know if you caught that his boat has the same name as the ship that went down. Yeah, and she finds like the piece of the stern of the ship. Yeah, I mean, it's
something that I feel like I saw a lot in film school, which is very simple and sophomoric metaphors done in a sort of quote-unquote artistic way.
Yeah.
Where, like, it really just leaves you empty at the end of things because, again, there's not much to ground yourself.
Yeah, it's a thing. I feel like it's so specific to the filmmaker's vision that, like, it doesn't really connect with the viewer. Like, I do really feel like Mark Jenkins is, like, trying to say something with this, but I don't know if he does
Grief bad.
a good enough... Yeah, there's something that feels, like, personal in there, and, like, everybody obviously has their own ways of, like, dealing with their own grief, but it's like,
But
does it
film
connect
is a form
with
of language, and if you're not communicating that well, like, that's a failure of the filmmaker's part, ultimately.
Yeah.
Like, I think, you know, a lot of the ideas and concepts at their core are very valid and interesting, and, you know, Mark Jenkins is right for that, but is he communicating that well?
Yeah.
And conveying it in a way that the audience can identify.
It's
and
the
honestly,
art card problem.
And honestly, like, I don't have a good answer for that question because, like, I'm still so fresh off of it, and, you know, like, setting matters as well. Like, we saw Skinamarink in the theater, and it's like, being in the theater holds you hostage. You have no choice but to fully engage with the film. And there were a few times in this where we started, like, talking and joking, you know, because we're sitting here watching it in my apartment. Like, I cannot say for sure whether, like, I would gain more about this film on a rewatch. Maybe. I don't know. I have a hard time, like, making definitive statements about what this film's success. Like, one watch in, I don't know.
Yeah, I think this film is suffering, like, from that art card problem. I mentioned this before, but it's not perfect, and there are plenty of exceptions. But it's the idea where when you go to a museum and you see a painting on the wall, and it's like, okay, it just looks like a tired dude. What is the painting supposed to be? You know, or photograph. I've seen that too at the fucking Guggenheim. I saw this. It was like just a dude, right? And I was like, okay, what? It's like he looks kind of sleepy. I'm like, all right, what's up? But then you go to the art card, a little card that's on to the right of the painting on the wall, and you read it, and it's like, this is a photograph of a guy right after a marathon or something.
Yeah.
So we're expressing the moment when he's tired or whatever, and it's like, hey, that's cool, but, like, I had to read the fucking card. Or, you know, it's a big white canvas with a red dot on it. You read the fucking thing, and it says, oh, this represents isolation and, you know, the overwhelming blah, blah, blah of society, right? And it's like, look, man, if you gotta read the card, the art isn't speaking for itself, which is the whole point. We're trying to communicate. It's art, right? And it doesn't have to be. There's another thing it can be. Art can also just serve the purpose of matching your fucking couch, right? And I think this movie matches, like, the couch of my mind really well.
Yeah, sure.
The anus of your mind.
Like, I think this is a fine vibes movie. It is nice to look at. It's a great screensaver. Like, I'll give it that.
No, I think it does do a lot of things well. You know, one thing, like, big to its credit is, like, I did not feel its length, really, personally. Like, and this is the kind of movie that, like, if you're really not digging it, you'll feel its length. At one point, like, I had to, you know, we ran it back because I was looking at my phone foolishly and missed a great moment.
And when we like Beef Wellington.
And when we, yeah, I was reading about Beef Wellington. What about it? But when I went to run it back, I was, like, shocked to see that there were only 20 minutes left in the film. Like, I thought we were, like, 30 minutes.
See, that's the only moment that I have where I felt its length is, like, I checked my watch with, like, 5 minutes left, and I was like, oh. Is that gonna be it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is kind of a shame that then, like, there is no really satisfying climax, but, like, the film is very, like, intentionally, like, sort of hypnotic with, like, its repetition, you know, and it is trying to, like, lull you into the same state of its protagonist. You know, it is sort of about being hypnotized And I thought it was really effective at that, like to check that moment and see like, oh, we're already over an hour into this movie and I feel like we're only 30 minutes in. It's like that is like that's an effective pacing, I think.
That's one of the examples where I almost feel again like a video game version of this would have worked better in that like you would have had direct agency and been following that routine directly and had that progression with more agency. Whereas with the film, you know, you are just a passive observer again, and because of that, it just passes by you. You can get into that state of mind of the routine, but the jarring effects of the weirdness that comes out still feels jarring. I mean, the shot of her, like, sped up and, like, shaking.
I kind of liked that.
It looked cool, but, like, it felt kind of weird in the context of the routine. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it is an effective, like, shattering of that repetition, which, like, the film does and needs to. Like,
Sure.
It's about that disruption, right? But, like, my problem is kind of like, I was like, oh, cool, this is kind of psychedelic and, like, visually interesting. It's something different, you know? Like, it's like demanding that I pay attention to something. But then it's like, there's kind of not much more of that, you know? I will say, like, I do enjoy... It's nothing more than a motif, really, but, like, visually... reversing shots is cool, especially when they're nice nature shots.
When shot on film, like
especially when shot on film,
technical skill.
It looks good. I mean, you know, they do of course process it digitally, so they could always just run that back in in Premiere. But like no, it's visually interesting. Again, like. It's just a visual motif. You know what I was really thinking about this movie is like this movie already exists before this one done better, and it's The Lighthouse. Yeah, it's.
Well, I made the joke like after several more like perfectly framed shots. I was like, it's like if Wes Anderson did The Lighthouse. Ah.
Yeah, I just ignored that.
Stupid take. It's funny, but
yeah, I mean it is. Thematically, there are lots of parallels, lots and lots.
100%.
Except The Lighthouse is also like about Prometheus and classical madness, right? And like seafaring tales, and it's all a period piece. There's just so much more to grip onto.
This is also a period piece.
Right? Yeah. But like, what is? But like, it takes advantage of being a period piece, more beyond just like the aesthetic.
They're
right?
different. I mean, they're different periods.
But also, like, it talks about mermaids. It talks like the dialogue is very period driven.
Well, I mean, that's the big thing is that there's dialogue.
Yeah,
I think that
it gets into old myths.
The biggest reason that The Lighthouse, this movie has tons of texture too. Like the biggest reason that The Lighthouse succeeds.
Because they had two characters.
Because it's two characters to play off of each other. You know, it's like most of this movie is just the one woman, and you know, we do see other people, you know, who are ghosts, kind of, sort of, memories, you know, but everybody is just like, it's all the characters, all of this is just stoicism. It's just like totally like blank face, like non-reactive, just, you know, stare, like it is impersonal. And, you know, I think that that's probably by design, but The Lighthouse is a story of madness via isolation, but it's two characters who are you know, contributing to each other's madness. Being stuck there together is what drives them insane.
I think that's a great point.
And this movie needs that.
And that's what I mean when I
There's
say
such an
texture.
emotional core to The Lighthouse.
Right.
You know?
Is narrative grip.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is textures and
Yes.
there are things to glom onto. the mythos with the seabirds, mermaids, the two characters and their interplay and like how they take advantage of each other, and like there's so many like social things that happen, and there's drama, and also too like tending the lighthouse as a routine is way more interesting than looking at some flowers like and walking away.
I don't think that's inherently true, but I think that
sure.
I think that like
it's shown.
Your point before that is really the biggest like crux, which is that it's hard to do drama without characters.
Yes. Yeah.
And this movie does not really have characters.
But it almost does in like the ghosts. Like
it almost does.
Like,
yeah.
Like the ghost of her.
The protagonist is almost a character.
Yeah,
that's
like
the thing,
there's her lover or whoever it was, and her daughter or whoever that was. Like these people who've died in her past that are haunting
or
her,
something
or
has
with her
happened
on
in the
island.
past. Yeah,
like it's or someone's past exactly. Like because there's some play with chronology because she also sees the miners, and we know that they were stranded there and died.
Yeah.
So like there's almost interplay there. But there's hardly any dialogue between
Yeah,
them.
well, I think of directors
There's
like
social interaction.
Bellatar or Robert Bresson, who have very stoic, model-esque actors who really don't emote at all.
Yorgos Lanthimos too.
Yeah, I think it works for them because there's an emotional core within the story to the point where the audience projects their emotion onto the characters. And I think that that Jenkins was trying to do that here, where like the main character is stoic, but I think we were meant to project our feelings of like how we understand grief to feel onto them.
Yeah.
It just doesn't connect as
Yeah,
much.
it's a little bit too specific for you to like project yourself onto it, but vague enough to be hard to connect with. It's like it's a weird middle ground. Like I think there's a lot of like interesting implications in the film that like if there was just some more concrete grounding could have been great stuff.
Yeah.
Like obviously there's some like presumed trauma involving her family, presumably, we don't know, but this man she keeps seeing and this young girl, it's probably her husband and daughter, maybe. There's some religious thing going on. She sees this priest a couple of times, but like
the daughter could also be her younger self.
That's true as well.
Because she has this scar running across her abdomen diagonally, and when the girl falls off the building, she falls into glass and she cuts herself the same way. Might have caught that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it
that's
could be
true.
like, oh, the death of her younger self, or something again.
Yeah,
pretentious. Like, I'm sorry, but like, and it's like, oh, we don't know if it's her daughter or younger self or whatever, and it's just like, well, now we just don't know anything. Like, we don't have enough to go off of, and it leaves things open ended to the point of leaving nothing.
I'm fine with ambiguity, but I do think I do long for something a little bit more tangible in this film.
Sure.
Just it doesn't even have to be much, like just a little bit,
A few of those crumbs.
Sure.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But the vibes are good.
I think that's the biggest core failure of this movie, right? Like, I think this movie can be
just
as
too
minimal
abstract,
as it is. It just needs some sort of emotive core or something to grasp onto. I think even if the character expressed facially a little bit more, it would be enough.
Or another thing this movie just could have used is, and I don't I don't care about it really landing or not, but just more scares.
Yeah. Oh
For a
man,
horror movie, you could,
this
like,
this
get
movie
some
is
horror?
this movie is like truly devoid of like anything
See, this
scary.
is a place where you really don't.
Which
need
is
to
a
be
shame.
minimal. It
Which is a shame. Yeah, I mean, there's like.
I mean, I gotta say, I think that's a failure of marketing. Like, I don't think this movie should have even
Been marketed as a horror.
as a horror
It's not a
movie.
horror movie.
Yeah, it's not,
Because-
I mean, it's like it has hints of the macabre. Like there is the part where they find the body in the water. That's kind of it though. Like, you know, you've got these ideas of quote unquote ghosts, you know, these ghosts of her past or the men that she sees in the mine, but they don't do anything other than look into the camera. You know, it's like, okay, you're haunted by ghosts, but what does that mean? Right? Like they're there, she is haunted, this island is haunted, but to what end?
It means grief.
But to what end? Like that's the thing. It's just like, it's fine if it means grief. That's okay. Every horror movie about ghosts is about grief. Like it's fine. It's okay. But like to what end? And like that's the thing, is like there's not any real like sort of climax. Like things get like a little bit trippier, and she starts like seeing herself, and like, ooh, the monolith disappears at one point, and ooh, now it's right outside her door, and it's like, oh, her scar is covered in lichen, the same lichen that she sees on the flowers. But it's like, but to what end? Like, what comes of that? Like, where is the threat? You know?
And in execution, what are
It's like Skinamarink is minimalist, and you can't see what's going on. But Skinamarink has a threat. Boy, does it have a threat!
Does it. Absolutely.
Boy, does it have a
No,
threat!
I couldn't agree more.
You know, and it's like
frankly, it's like the worst threat possible.
and like
fairness.
Enys Men does not have a
Well,
threat.
And the
like
grief can be the threat, and madness can be the threat. Like, that's fine. I mean, that's the same with the Lighthouse. But like you have to like act on that threat beyond
right.
having a person randomly scream and then showing another person randomly scream in another location, or showing like all of the miners smiling in the dark. It's a good start, but you can't stop there. And
Right, but right,
Yeah.
what is
Well,
the outcome of her
like, you got
madness,
so much
you
more
know?
with the miners. I felt
That's an interesting segue into a question I have for both of y'all.
sure.
Do you think this movie could be saved with like a bigger finale?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
I
Yeah.
do.
I mean, I was, you know, I was never having a bad time. Like, I was always, like, sort of, like, mostly on board, even up through the end. But I was kind of just like, all right, I guess that was it. You know, like, it's not bad, but, like, I do wish there was more. I think this movie could be made great with, like, a meaningful climax.
Yeah.
Well, like-
I think that's all it needs, is it just needs something to justify the build, because I think it builds really well, but it builds to nothing.
Yeah.
And
It's-
if it was building to something, I think it could be really great, because it does a lot of things right.
And
Yeah,
it's so
I agree.
weird too, because the movie it's called Enys Men. The movie features a routine in which our protagonist, on the way back to her home, like the interim, is always interrupted by her walking to the edge of the mine shaft and holding
Dropping
up
the
and dropping
rock.
a stone.
Yeah.
She drops it very robotically too. It wasn't really. It's kind of comedic, almost the way, like at the very beginning, she lifts almost like a cartoon, like that's very stiff, and she drops it, and there's like, well, any person would just kind of reach over, and there'd be.
Well, I
something
mean,
there.
it's robotic because the ritual is robot. She's living on autopilot.
Yeah.
That's why it's robotic. There's like the one point later in the film where she kind of like from a distance sort of like chucks a rock in there, you know, and then she runs back and does it the right way.
Right,
You know, it's like the break from the routine like freaks her out, you know. So
Which is cool
I
because
think
like
that's-
also like the lichen is a break from her routine and it freaks her out.
and I do
Like,
like
something to say
I do
there.
like
It's
the
kinda cool,
you know there's always when she drops the rock and there's like a direct overhead shot going down
Always
the mine
same
shaft.
shot, yeah.
It's always the same shot, but I like that whether you can see the bottom or not changes.
How long it takes to hit.
There's like inconsistencies with how long until you hear the echo of the rock hit the bottom or whatever. Sometimes it bounces off the side, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, it's like for a lot of the time it's like it's a deep shaft, but you can see like water down at the bottom. You can see like light reflecting off water. And then a few times towards the end, it's just like black all the way down. And I think that, you know, again, visually, it's cool.
But we need her to, like, properly go down into the well and experience the Enys Men.
I thought that's what it was building to.
That's
like
my point,
the
right?
descent.
Like, she keeps walking by it, they keep setting it up. She sees the miners around.
The descent into the mine.
The ghosts of the island are slowly bringing her into this one place. It's a lot like, you're seeing, like, House of Voices, or,
no, I read House of Leaves, though.
It has the French name is different for that movie, but, or The Orphanage, I think it's also called. But it's there's a very similar thing where it's like a haunted orphanage, and we follow this protagonist and slowly find out why the ghosts lead her into seeing why the orphanage is haunted.
Didn't we do that on the podcast?
We did.
The Orphanage, the Spanish movie.
Oh, the Del Toro produced one?
Yeah.
Not the same movie. Different movie.
Oh.
No, it's called House of Voices, or no, different film. I think I mentioned it on.
I was gonna say, because what you described was just The Orphanage, which we did do on the podcast.
Film. Like, there's this great shot with like all these like handprints on the glass, like on a mirror. It's a whole thing. But anyway, no, I watched it like back in high school. I haven't seen it since. It might not be very good, but anyway, there's a lot of movies that do it. But like, I love that idea. You know, ghosts calling back on you. Silent Hill was kind of about that. Like, there's a lot of cool narratives that are about like ghosts, you know, trying to lead you. So, another great example is Caveat. Has that?
Yeah, sure.
Know, with a ghost trying to like manipulate the situation, and it's super cool. And I was getting that vibe with these miners. Like, and even if they are just like this overwhelming force of grief that take her in the end, you know, like they just sort of represent like her own grief and her own past and her own losses or whatever.
Yeah, it's like they don't really take her at the end either.
They don't.
It's like
and
nothing.
It would have been
again, like nothing really happens.
Like we done that.
Well, and you know,
that's all it needed. That's all it fucking needed.
We get a number of shots of that like drawing that's like framed in the house of like the stone of like the monolith, and it's got like.
Corpses.
It's got inverted. It's inverted under. You see it above and below ground, and there's like bones and stuff under there. It's like, yeah, I'm thinking, okay, so like we see her like dropping the rock into the mine. She's constantly, you know, she's drawn to this monolith. That's where the source of the lichen, right? That's got the lichen growing on it. That ends up growing on her and on the flowers and shit. It's like, okay, so she's gonna descend into the mine and see what's under that monolith.
And guess
right?
what? It's the same as the surface. It's all inverted. Cool ending.
But
nothing.
None of that.
Yeah, we don't get any of that. She just
and
just kind of
you know, I almost wish the monolith had more of an alluring sort of hypnotic force to it. You know, I almost feel like they were trying to do that with the motif of it throughout the movie. But it wasn't. It never felt like she was drawn to it. Like I feel like it could have been.
Yeah, that felt like a bit of a half measure.
Flat.
That felt like a bit of a half measure.
There was that one bit very early on where we saw a shot of the monolith kind of lit from the base at night, and I said it looks like there's a face of a mustache man on there. And you're like, oh, like the lover from the beginning, which is kind of funny.
Like the guy she keeps saying.
I gotta say, the lover. Got big Mario vibes.
Oh, for sure.
Man, where she sees them like dancing in the living room, that was funny as fuck, man.
Like,
that was funny as shit, as hell, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of moments, and particularly when the movie tries to do horror, where it's pretty funny. Like, again, the screaming, where it cuts to him screaming, ah! Outside, and then her in bed, ah! Somewhere else. That's not. It's funny. Like I'm sorry. Like it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because of the punch-ins, and it's like that's a 70s stylistic thing. It's like that shit is funny in 70s movies too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's been parodied to death.
Again, I think Ben is right when it's like this film it was kind of badly marketed as a horror film, because it really isn't. Like it's never scary. It's eerie at times at best.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's necessarily trying to be a horror film.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, like, even if it doesn't land, I just don't think this movie tries to be scary.
Yeah.
Whether it's scary or not, it just doesn't really put that in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I certainly feel like it's trying to be atmospheric.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But
I think it's successfully atmospheric. I just kind of, want that to lead to something. Atmosphere is great. The whole time I was feeling the vibes that this movie was laying down. Like, I was vibing with it, but I was waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
And nothing ever really did happen.
Cool.
In terms of atmosphere and vibes, like, it just, maybe this is the fault of the trailer, but it kept reminding me of The Wicker Man and how much more tangible and evocative the vibes of The Wicker Man.
Well, the Wicker Man also has like a plot and characters,
And at one point, The Wicker Man cuts to snails. And this movie also cuts to a
slug once.
And guess what? In The Wicker Man, it means a lot. There's a lot of meaning behind that shot of like the slugs fucking, right? Like Christopher Lee comes out and like even comments on it. Whereas in this movie, it's like, cool, it's an artistic shot of a slug, but like...
That's fine. It's a vibe shot. The slug was moving backwards. It was one of those reverse shots. It's fine. Again, The Wicker Man has plot and characters. This movie was trying to do something different. I definitely agree. Like, the trailer gave off, like, such huge Wicker Man vibes. I mean, the comparison is obvious because, 70s film, or in this case, 70s style film, with some, like, pagan occult vibes on an island off of the British Isles, But honestly, like, the whole time I was watching this movie, I barely thought of The Wicker Man at all.
Well, and that's the thing.
I thought of The Lighthouse a lot, but almost never The Wicker Man.
This one's really not very occult.
No, again, there's the hints of it,
the skulls beneath with the inversion.
Like a monolith, like an old standing stone that is like worshipped is like, that's very like old, European occult kind of shit.
Sure, yeah, but
there's people, she's got all the girls dancing around it and singing, and it's like there's hints of that, but nothing really tangible. There's something with the flowers too. Yeah. It's like, ooh, what are these strange flowers? Are they magical or hallucinogenic or something? Are these flowers that grow on this island used in old pagan rituals? No. It's an evocative film. It evokes a lot of interesting ideas that I think are not really present in the film overall, but it sure does evoke them.
Question for y'all. If you were able to take a job, let's say $20,000 for 1 month isolated on an island doing research on flowers, would you take it?
Yeah,
for just a month? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd take it for like 2 months, like 2 to 3. Like, I can always fucking draw. Like, I can keep myself real fucking entertained. That's fine.
Yeah, no, I feel like as a meditative exercise, like, I feel like I could definitely do that.
I think I could too.
I think there would.
I'd love it.
There would definitely be boredom, but yeah.
I value boredom, honestly.
Boredom
nowadays.
is good, yeah. I do feel like we don't let ourselves be bored enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think the internet has broken a lot of our brains.
Yeah. Mine included.
Yeah,
I feel like
100%.
I need to fucking set my damn phone down.
That's the thing I realized more than anything when...
No!
When I first moved into my apartment, it took them like a week to install internet. So I was without internet for a week. And I was so bored, and I kind of valued that feeling because, like, I don't feel like I feel that very often.
Yeah, man. I think
there's so much distractions everywhere.
I think boredom kind of facilitates creativity in a way that other things do not. And yeah, that's a totally unrelated tangent. But yeah.
I mean, it's valid, you know, like, she is very isolated on this island.
Yeah.
Prone to what should be boredom.
I did like the reveal towards the end where, like, we see the notes that she's been taking and, you know, where she notes the date, the temperature of the soil, and her observations on the flower, and it's always just been no change, no change, no change. And it's like, we see, like, the page that she's been working on, and it's like, okay, it looks like she's been there, like, you know, a week, 2 weeks. But then at the end, we see, like, the wider shot of the whole, and there's, like, a whole other page with just, like, that identical thing. It's like, oh, no, she's been here a long time. I like that reveal. Wish they did a little bit more with it, but...
Yeah. Ditto that. Well, speaking of bored, are we ready to rate?
Yeah, are we bored with this discussion? Yeah. Are you bored, listener? Are you ready for us to wrap this shit up?
All right.
Well, start us off then, Clave.
Yeah,
what would you rate this?
So many times. The vibes are good. The substance isn't there for me. There's other vibes movies I think I like the vibes of more. We did talk about Lamb to compare other another kind of vibes movie. I also much prefer Lamb. But you know what? I think a fine 3. Above average. I'll give it that. Fine.
Ben, what about you?
Enys Men. More like Enys Mid.
2 weeks in a row.
Whoa.
3 out of 5 as well.
You know, I'm gonna give it a little bump. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Sure.
This, you know, I feel like we were pretty, you know, harsh in our critique of the film, but, like, ultimately I didn't have a bad time watching it. It didn't feel too long. Like, I definitely was, you know, mostly engaged with, like, the sort of hypnotic pacing. Like,
except when you're looking at Beef Wellington.
Except when I was looking at Beef Wellington, yes.
Beef Wellington is very compelling.
You're the one, Cleveland, you're the one who brought up Gordon Ramsay while we were watching the movie, so it's really your fault. I wouldn't have been thinking about Beef Wellington otherwise. So it's not the movie's fault. It's Cleveland's fault.
I didn't Google Beef Wellington.
No, but you brought it up. So it's your fault. It's not the movie's fault.
It's kind of the movie's fault I brought up Beef Wellington, though.
But I was otherwise pretty engaged. I think this movie is a great technical accomplishment in making a film that truly does feel like it was made in the 70s.
Sure.
Aesthetically, all the techniques that it used, like if I did not
on a rock, so that made it a little bit easier.
If I did not know that this film was shot in the last year or so, I would think that it was a 70s film. And I think that
except for the credits music.
Except for the credits music, yeah. And I think that is a great technical achievement. So, yeah, I'm gonna give it the 3.5 out of 5. I would watch it again and see if maybe it connects with me better on second viewing. But that will give Enys Men an average of 3.2 out of 5. I don't think it's a strong recommendation from any of us, but, you know.
From Enys of us. Maybe
it'd be your thing. Next week, it's Cleveland's pick. What are we doing next week, Cleve?
Next week, we are doing a big hard left turn. We're gonna watch Shin Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
Oh fucking yeah.
Yeah.
I have been meaning to watch Shin Godzilla for ages, and on top of that, I'm finally bringing my buddy Spence on. You know, like, Spence has never been on before, but, like, he's a lot of his recommendations and a lot of, like, takes and stuff that I have were influenced by him. Like, when we watch, like, any of the Tokusatsu stuff or whatever, I learned a lot of that stuff from him. So I'm really excited to bring him on so he can just really weeb out with
We're bringing on a Japanese expert.
and a cryptid expert. Spence is great. But he's a good friend of mine. And
is Godzilla a cryptid?
No.
I don't think so.
No. But I'm just saying he's all super into all that kind of stuff, and like we have a lot of fun during movie nights and stuff. And I think he'll be a real.
Should have brought him on for the Abominable episode. I would have liked to see
a lot of stuff to say.
Yeah,
Well, maybe
I think,
it's not the last time. Well,
I
there's
think
more Bigfoot movies out.
I feel like Spence and I would align in our thoughts on Bigfoot.
I think you would.
Yeah,
I think you would.
Does he exist?
I think so.
He's out there.
You weren't on that episode,
Yeah,
so
I did listen to it though.
Oh yeah, what'd you think?
I thought it was pretty good. I don't think I'm gonna watch that movie.
You're not
I
missing
feel like
much.
I've seen variants of that movie dozens of times
Yeah,
on the Sci-Fi Channel.
The best thing about it was Jeffrey Combs by miles.
And Lance Henriksen, and also the dude who gets his face bitten off by the Sasquatch.
Yeah, I'm glad we watched it. Anyway, sponsor time.
I'm glad I watched it for like the 8th time. So next week is Shin Godzilla, so sponsor time, yes.
The bell tolls on the shelf. The shelf bell.
The sponsor shelf has a bell.
The shelf bell tolls. What terrible fate has beset us this week to give us money for our episode?
Yeah.
This week. Sorry. This week was brought to you by, well, have you ever been to just out and about having a day and then you tripped and fell into a dark dimensional portal into a strange liminal space, but also a sexy liminal space? This episode is brought to you by the Backshots Room, an officially licensed Backrooms porn parody.
Thanks.
Fuck into another place.
Yeah.
Barked so hard, I no clip.
Into the Backshots Room.
To the Backshots Room.
All right. Then that'll do it for us this week.
So liminal.
If you like the show, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/podpeoplepod. Shout out to our honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, and Micah. We love them and thank them and appreciate them. You can follow us on Twitter at podpeoplepod. I don't really post anything over there, but I did realize that that's probably the best way to, message us outside of the Discord. So if you have any reason to get in contact with us, Twitter is the place to do it. You can also follow us at letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. I'm on Twitter at SomeSpookySnake and streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/SomeSpookySnake sometimes.
Again, I'm not gonna plug Twitter anymore. So instead,
What's your recommendation for this week?
Give a recommendation for the new Spirit Possession record.
Yes.
Of the
Sign. It's so good.
It is some incredible metal.
Good recommendation.
It's very thrashy. How would you describe it? I find it hard to describe, but it's incredibly technical.
It's black metal, but it's but it's very manic.
It's
and
incredibly
intense.
technical guitar music, and he's doing all of this finger picking style, which is super impressive.
Yeah.
That record is incredible. Check it out.
They're on tour with Bell Witch later this year too. We're going to see them.
Oh, I'm sure I can see live. Dope.
Yeah.
Even
And
better.
I did mention earlier that Enys Men would make a good Bell Witch music video. So
and it would.
It comes full circle.
It's funny that they're touring together because they're opposite
could
sides of the
could not be
spectrum.
more different in
Yeah.
terms of style, but I'm super hyped for that tour.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hi, what's up? Hi, I'm Cleveland.
Yeah.
Mosher. You might know me from the hour we
From
just,
the
we were just
podcast.
talking from. It's me here to do a sponsor for you. Not a sponsor. I
we already did
that.
a sponsor.
Sorry,
What's happening?
Pretty drunk. I'm gonna shout out to Dread XP and all the games that we're working on over there that I do every week. Go check out any of them. Amanda's been blowing up, dude.
Shout out to Cleveland's job.
No, seriously, go play Amanda the Adventurer. It fucking whips. Everyone's playing it. And it's legitimately good. And again, the WNUF folks did the analog horror sequences in it, and it's fucking cool. It's really cool. Yeah, just amazing stuff. Go check out like all the fan art and stuff has been amazing for Amanda too. This one person just dropped like a whole something Neutron or whatever, dropped like this really cool animated sequence that was really rad. But anyway, go check it out. That's it from me.
All right, thanks for listening. Don't forget to Enys Men.